What happened to you? Where did you go?
You mean on the last like 4 things I flaked on, or for the last 2 years?
Pick whichever you want.
Well, I kind of pulled out a little bit when I did the book, right? That was like 2 years. And then came back pretty strong for like a year. I was going back into the whole thing. And it was funny because when I did the book, I realized that the whole hedonism thing wasn't really my bag and just wasn't making me happy. So I came to that realization, much like I came to the realization that money didn't make me happy, and then still chased money for a long time. But yeah, I kind of wanted to get off the hedonistic treadmill. And I came back after the book. I mean, there's a lot of like people that were talking shit and whatever. And I kind of did it a little bit for Ignite, and also just because I was kind of bored and COVID was over. But I definitely realized after going, I did, what was it? I did France, and then we did South Africa, did South America. I did Dubai, kind of like a whole tour, Maldives, and then I did Thailand. And I just realized like I didn't want to travel around with 12 girls everywhere that I went, and I didn't want to dedicate my whole life to my sex addiction. So that was just the end of it.
Why? Why didn't you want that? What were you believing previously that you sort of disillusioned yourself of?
Well, the belief part of it, I would say that pleasure will make you happy, and that hedonism was the answer, and that if I got a ton of pussy and had a bunch of money and did all this stuff, that would make me happy. And it did. It was fun. Like, don't get me wrong. It was fun to fuck hot girls and do all that stuff. But I just went to the edge of the earth with it. And I think there was a point. I mean, there's definitely a point. I was on a yacht, 300-foot yacht, 30 girls, and I'm just like, I should be stoked. And I wasn't. And like my energy was being sucked in a bunch of different directions. I just remember just being way happier surfing with my buddies, doing a couple vacation, like all the stuff that I'd kind of done before Ignite. So I think 2012 till 2016 was probably the craziest. That was like the Motley Crue, rock star, like drug, sex, and rock and roll. Like that was it. I, became famous. It was like chicks were, fucking me in bathrooms. It was just like the crazy shit, and it was new and it was fun. And I did that for a long time. And then I got a girlfriend in like 16, and I was just, like I said, much happier doing the couple vacations, surfing. The guys who do the guy shit would work out during the day and then, play cards, whatever. I could fuck my girlfriend at night. There was no distractions, no stress, no headaches, no bullshit. And I was just like, fuck, this is much better. And then I decided to Ignite because I just kind of didn't want to be taking pictures in parking lots for the next 30 years with every asshole that came up to me and not have like something to show for
not
it.
Monetize the audience in some way.
I just felt like I should build a brand. I should just do something with it. And so it was, and also I don't know, I was watching TV, I think it was like 2017, and they said weed was becoming legal, or weed was legal. And I was like, this is perfect. I smoke a lot of weed. A lot of people wouldn't want to touch this space. Let me do this. And so I decided to launch Ignite. And when we did that, it was just everything I'd done before on steroids. Literally.
Because now you've got a capitalist justification. You've got a commercial reason to go and do this.
And, we'd raised $100 million. It was like, it was just
got to make it work.
Let's go do it. Let's just do it stronger than anybody's ever done it. Let's, kind of like do a modern version of Playboy. And it was just kind of, I don't know. It was just like all the stuff that I kind of wanted to do when I was younger. Like I wanted to fucking be like the new Hugh Hefner. I want to do all that stuff. And I did that, and it was fun. The $1 million parties, the travel in the world, all the stuff. But I was already kind of over it from the realization that I was happier having a girlfriend than doing the harem thing. And now I'm doing the harem thing on like a crazy scale with like 100 girlfriends and all this shit. And, yeah, but then I felt kind of trapped because now I had a brand, and now I kind of had to do it. And it was almost like COVID saved me a little bit.
This is the difference between being homeless and going camping, right? That one is sort of mandated upon you, and the other one is a choice that you get to make.
Yeah. And it's a lot more fun when it's your choice. You're doing the same thing, but if you're choosing to do it, it's different.
How big of a difference was that sort of framing, the fact that previously this was adventurous. It was on your timeline. There was no degree of pressure for you to be able to do it. And then you come back and you go, this feels like a job, even though it's the least job-looking job that ever did job.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. I think it was more because I was over it than because I had to do it.
Mm-hmm. So you're like a punch-drunk boxer getting back in the ring for one last go.
Kind of, and I also felt like an obligation to do it because, we had built the company and done all this stuff. So I don't know. I was kind of a slave to my own creation for a while. And then COVID almost saved me a little bit, I guess, because then I took the 2 years and wrote the book and zoomed out and looked at my life and things that made me happy, things that didn't make me happy. And, that was pretty eye-opening.
Was there an overarching lesson from that? Obviously, you said, I preferred this thing, which was one girl and spending a bit of time with my friends. Was there a deeper insight than just admin to wrangle a squadron of chicks is kind of a bit of a hard day's work?
Well, it wasn't even so much that it was hard, but it was just spending time doing things that I didn't care about. That was a part of it. And then the big realization was the pleasure, and how it functions like a drug and how you need more of it to, get the same high. And then eventually you have to do it to not feel like shit, that whole thing. So, yeah, I just beat all my addictions when I was writing my book. I beat my sex addiction, my gambling addiction, my weed addiction, which was actually one of the harder ones to beat. And then I kind of went back into all that stuff, and then kind of beat it again. And I think when you beat it a second time, you're just okay, we got enough, And
where have you landed now? What's life like for you now?
Well, I spent the last 2 years working on this course, and I spent, a decent amount of time developing this new supplement product line and just hanging with my friends. I play paintball, I, work out, I mountain bike. I do shit with my boys, and I don't hang out with a bunch of girls all the fucking time. And
what about that differential in the hedonic set point waterline between sort of where you were and where you are? We all know what it kind of feels like to maybe be in everyone's been on holiday and had peak experiences and then had to go back to their sort of normaler existence, and they go, oh my God, this sort of feels a bit gray and a bit dull. What was that deceleration like?
I would imagine it would be like quitting heroin, maybe. That was the one drug I didn't do. But yeah, I think it's tough. You ever seen the gambling show Owning Mahoney, or the movie?
No.
So it's a true story about this guy, and he's a huge gambling addict, and he makes about $20,000 a year. And at one point in the movie, he's embezzled so much money from his bank that he's betting $70,000 a hand on baccarat, and he's $5 million in debt, driving a $3,000 car, and he's married, and his wife has no idea. And then he ends up winning $10 million. So he could pay off the 4 or 5 million and literally be set for life. And this is in the 80s when $1 million was enough. And he ends up losing it all back, every dollar, and goes to jail. And it's funny because they had an interview afterwards, and they asked him, they said, on a scale of 1 to 100, what would you rate, your highest thrill in life? And he's gambling. And he goes 100. And they said, outside of gambling, what's the greatest thrill you've ever had in your entire life? And he's I think about a 20. And the guy's how do you feel about living at a 20 for the rest of your life? And I think when you do max pleasure seeking, it's tough because you kind of numb yourself even in that moment. I remember having breakfast with my buddy, and he's oh, what'd you do yesterday? And, it's oh, fuck 4 chicks or fuck 5 chicks or, whatever it was. And it was just it wasn't even it's kind of telling me he ate Cheerios. It was just zero emotion, none of it. It didn't, it was just kind of the course of the day. And I think that kind of goes back to the whole, you just get used to whatever your baseline is. And I just set such a crazy baseline of what normal was that I don't know, anything other than that absolute overstimulation is going to feel like a little bit of a void. But I think at the end of the day, I got to the end of the earth with it. And if you go to the end of the earth with something and it's not enough, then it's never going to be enough.
There's a diary entry from Elton John. It might be the best diary entry of all time. He says, woke up, watched Grandstand, wrote Candle in the Wind, went to London, bought Rolls Royce, Ringo Starr came for dinner. That's his diary entry.
I can see that. It's just like, and it's probably like, and for him, there was probably like no emotion with any of that stuff. It was just like, yeah, that's like the course of my day.
How important is it in order to be able to say, it's the classic rich man telling you that money won't buy you happiness. How important was it for you to sort of push that limit and take the cable car to the top of the hedonism mountain? Is there any shortcut? Could you have seen these things were not going to make me happy without having to go through kind of the trenches of getting there?
Absolutely not. I had to do it. Like I
do
had to burn my hand on the stove over and over again. Like I just had
think
to do
about
it.
this all the time, right? So there's two types of lessons. Bill, mutual friend, good example of this. 2D lessons and 3D lessons. Reading, die with 0, 2D lesson. Listening to the audiobook, even listening to him on a podcast, like a 2.5D lesson. Going to Bill's house and seeing his dialed-in system and the chef and the wake surfing and all the rest of it, 3D lesson.
I gave him that stuff, by the way, the chef, the wake surfer, and he fought me on the wake surfing for like 10 years.
You designed Bill Perkins. I understand. He's like a mixed race fucking like version of you. My point being that there's so many things that you want to be able, the whole personal development industry is based on, I don't need to do this thing. I can learn it through somebody else. What's that quote about like any idiot can learn from their mistakes? I prefer to learn from the mistakes of others.
Yeah.
And what I'm fascinated by are these kind of champagne challenges that are ones that you can only learn the lessons of by actually doing them.
Well, there's a caveat to that. I think for me personally, I had to learn them myself, but I don't know if everybody else is wired like that. And I also think that if there was a guy like me that told me, I might have listened. Like if Hugh Hefner would have told me, I might have listened. My dad told me, go f yourself.
Why?
Because he didn't do it. Like he didn't fuck thousands of girls. He didn't go down this road. Like he doesn't know. So he can give me his theory, which is kind of like the whole dating space. My biggest issue with the dating space. There's a lot of like theory. These guys haven't done it to the point that I've done it. And they haven't like absolutely figured it out. It's kind of like poker. Like in the beginning of poker, there was a lot of theory. Like we all had ideas of what we thought was the best thing. And like, then 10 years later, like the best of us all got together and we agreed on a lot of things. And when the quantum supercomputer solved it, we were just wrong. We're just dead wrong about a lot of things that every of the best player thought was for sure the answer. We're just wrong, And I think that's true in dating. And I think there's a lot of guys out there that think that they're right. And a lot of these female dating coaches, then they're just wrong.
You've got this quote that says, achieving the result is never as good as what you think it's going to feel like. And Tate says something not too dissimilar, which is having things isn't fun. Getting things is fun.
Yeah, I agree with his quote actually more than I agree with my quote, because it's kind of in line with like the journey is more rewarding than like the top of the mountain, And that was the mistake that I made, is it was just like, how do I race to the top of the mountain? Not like, how do I enjoy each part of this journey? And the journey is where it's at. Like, it's not about like being at the peak. It's about like, okay, here we are 3,000 feet. Like the view's great. Here we are 5,000 feet. The view's better. Here we are at 7,000 feet. The view's better. For me, it was just like top, get to the top. It's like, okay, view's cool. Like, what's the next mountain? And so I didn't get any of the enjoyment of the climb really, because I was so like, I don't know, just fixated on getting there as fast as possible. And I think sometimes just enjoying the journey and like taking a breath and, and being thankful for, the climb that you've made so far, I think is more rewarding than just even getting to the end. Because a lot of times you don't even get to the end, but it doesn't matter because you enjoy the process and the journey.
We can talk in pithy aphorisms all day. Tactically, how are you helping yourself to take more pleasure in the journey? I think a lot of people feel like this, maybe without having to fuck 1,000 chicks, but a lot of people kind of peer over the shoulder of the present moment, looking for what's coming next. When I find myself doing this the most is when I'm at a comedy show. So you're waiting to get in, you're excited to get in, and then you're excited for the first guy to come on, but you're really excited for the next guy to get, and then you're really excited, and you're like, hang on, at no point am I actually enjoying the guy that's on. I'm kind of always looking past him. So what do you do? Is there anything, have you operationalized being able to enjoy the journey a little bit more? Are there any strategies that you've implemented?
I think being present, like that's probably the number one thing that you could do, is just be present. And I think also being present and being grateful is the answer. I mean, that's, it's not that complicated, but I just think that that's the answer. It's being present and being grateful. So if you do that, then you're by definition enjoying the journey. You're kind of focused on where you're at and not where you're going. And I think a lot of people focus mostly on where they're going instead of enjoying where they're at. And, I did the same thing. So,
who would have thought that you and a meditation teacher would have arrived at the same place? Do you remember me and you had a dinner at Bill's house? I think it might have been first or second time that we met. And I wrote an insight after that, which I've wanted to talk to you about since then. So trajectory is more important than position. If you're number 2 in the world, but last year you were number 1, that is way worse than sitting at number 150, but being on a huge upward slope from 300 12 months ago. There's a few reasons for this. Recency bias. If your value is increasing right now, that means you have to be popular at the moment. By looking at recent trajectory, you're selecting for only the people who are trendy right now, which really is all that we can remember. We can also romanticize where someone will be in future if they're currently hot stuff. How high might they climb? Who knows? Maybe to the top, maybe even beyond the top. Humans struggle to realize that everything is temporary, including growth and decline. Instead, it's easier to label people as heroes and losers based on what we know of them right now, so we don't have to predict a messy future. There's an old saying that there's 3 types of people on a ladder. 1 at the bottom, 1 at the middle, and 1 at the top. Which one is the best one to be? The one that's still climbing. That doesn't just work for status, but possessions, achievements, wealth, sex, everything. It's not just how we see other people, it's also how we see ourselves. We know when we're moving up or down, when life is getting better or worse. Tate said, having things isn't fun, getting things is fun. Another way to look at it is this, and this is what me and you spoke about. Any accomplishment is just a new, higher bar for you to get over in future. I see this in my own work. Let's say we do a new episode that hits 1 million plays in a day. Amazing. That's very exciting and a new record. Wow. Also, that means that every video in future is now going to feel unimpressive until we hit 1.1 million or higher. In this way, rapid increases in success are more a curse than a blessing. So here's the theory. Slow success strategy. Even though we might want our goals and accomplishments to arrive immediately, maybe a smarter strategy is to stretch out the achievements of our dreams. We shouldn't wish for overnight success, as we would then need to be able to beat it pretty soon, lest we feel like we're declining. Instead, slow, consistent progress is a more reliable way to maintain satisfaction. Purposefully aiming for slow success strategy may actually ensure that you always feel like you're going in the right direction.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think it's kind of similar to the Chinese farmer parable, which is that you kind of don't know what's good or bad. Like you could have instant success, like you could win the lottery, but a lot of times that makes people depressed, more so after a year than losing their arm, right? So, sometimes people think, oh, I got a, big promotion, or I won a ton of money, or I did this or did that, and they think it's great, but you don't really know until, 10 years, 20 years online, deathbed, whatever, like, was that actually good or not? Yeah, exactly. So, I like the idea of the slow success because it's kind of like a constant climb. And I always said, like, if I were to plot my life and I could just, if this was a simulation, I could just do whatever I wanted, it would be like start at the absolute bottom and just slow road up, But what I did is I like started here, went here, went here, you know what I mean?
And now tried to reset it to make there not actually feel like there.
Yeah. And I said this to Bill. I actually said that I wanted to bet him or whatever, like, I don't know, $1 million. It was something where we would go work a regular job for like 6 months at Walmart or a valet. I think he actually offered me like $1 million to be a valet, but it was like in the summer in Vegas for 3 months.
Most miserable.
I should have done it.
Yeah.
But like those sort of things will give you a reset. Just like when I went to boot camp, that was like a full reset because I was thankful for all the things that, I took for granted. So I think having those resets is actually good. So, if you were to
writing a book.
Yeah. I mean, something that just kind of like grounds you out, and then even going to jail for like 3 months, whatever, just some shitty experience. Because then after that, it's like, you know what I mean? Like if you were to be thrown in jail tomorrow for 3 months or 4 months, like you might think that'd be terrible.
You spent $1 million. I bet you could get someone to make a jail for you for 3 months.
I think
Mr. Beast would be the most.
I think Mr. Beast has done that.
Yeah, to be like the most champagne homeless solution to this ever. But in other news, this episode is brought to you by AG1. Over the span of about a year, I tried pretty much every greens drink to find the best one. I came across AG1 and I've stuck with it for over 3 years because it is so much more than just greens. It is the most comprehensive, highly tested, and rigorously formulated supplement I've ever found, providing essential nutrients and gut health support. They all work together to fill the nutritional gaps in your diet, increase energy and focus, aids with digestion, and supports a healthy immune system without the need to take multiple products or pills. Best of all, if you are on the fence, there is a 90-day money-back guarantee, so you can buy it and try it for 89 days, and if you do not like it, they will give you your money back. Plus, they ship internationally. Right now, you can get a year's free supply of vitamin D3 and K2, plus 5 free AG1 travel packs, and that 90-day money-back guarantee by going to the link in the description below or heading to drinkag1.com/modernwisdom. That's drinkag1.com/modernwisdom. What about the public scrutiny? You kind of mentioned it earlier on. There seemed to be a period, I can't remember when it was, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago or whatever, when it just felt like people criticizing financial statements. This is where Ignite is. This is actually what's going on behind the scenes. So what happened with all of that, and how accurate have those predictions been?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like, I think it was like 4 years ago. They're like, Dan Bilzerian going broke. Like, he's, fleeing the country. He's going to jail. Ignite's going bankrupt. It's like all this stuff. And it was just funny because I think I was worth like 375 million at the time or so. I was like worth more then than I'd like almost ever been. Like Ignite was actually doing really well at that point. Like, yeah, we'd lost 50 million, but a lot of companies, they spend a lot of money on marketing, and we've done like 100 million in sales at least every year for the last like 3 or 4 years, just in vapes alone. And so, like I think Uber lost like 5 billion in a quarter or something, and they were like never profitable. Like, I just don't think people understand companies. And we were also in the wrong space. We were doing weed in a environment where the government was like heavily taxing the people that are doing it legally, and nobody's making money. But whatever, it's like, it was one of those things where all these YouTube people were making all these like crazy claims and this clickbait. And because of that, they were getting a bunch of views because, you can just say whatever you want. That's the thing about a celebrity, is like, you could say whatever you want, like literally whatever you want. And there's no recourse. You can't really sue them. Like, at best you could get a retraction. But like the legal language, unless you say that they have AIDS or something, like medically, you can say whatever the fuck you want. And so I was in a weird position because my videos were getting like 50 million views, and my stories were getting like 8 to 12 million views a story, and my Snapchats were getting like 3 million. So it was like, do I want to shine a light on all these retards, which is probably what they want? You know what I mean? That's why you make clickbait in the first place, and address this stuff. Or do I just want to like focus on my book? And I just kind of like focused on my book and just ignored all the nonsense. But it was shocking, like how much people believed. Like, they were just like, oh, like, Dan's going broke. And I'm just like flying around my jet, like a fucking house paid for, like all this crazy shit. And it's like, the fuck, like I've got $4 million in watches, but I didn't like flex that. I didn't like, I just didn't give a fuck. I was just like, whatever, dude. But it's funny, like the people just believe kind of like whatever they read. And see, I think they're getting better now because of COVID and because how many times the media has lied to them. They're starting to figure it out. But I don't know. I mean, it was a weird thing. And so then that's kind of one of the reasons that I did come back a little bit, and I started posting a little bit again, because when I stopped for the book, that was kind of the time when I realized, like, and reflected on my life. I was like, okay, like I kind of don't want to do this anymore or whatever. But I, for the company, I was like, okay, like, we'll go back and, give them a quick fuck you. And that's what I did. And then after doing that, I was like, okay, now I want to go back to like being a normal person. But yeah, it's surprising, man. People just, they'll just believe what any YouTube video says, and there's not really any regulation. I mean, if I were to make the laws, it would be that if you knowingly, like, said something on a media outlet that you knew was false, there would be repercussions, but there's just not.
It's going to be very difficult to prove that you knew that it was false as well, right? I thought that the numbers worked that way. I guess it's going to be kind of slippery.
Yeah, I suppose so. But I think there is like an element of responsibility when you have a big platform. Like, Piers Morgan just went crazy on Tate the other day because he, said something that wasn't true. It's like, where were you during COVID when you were telling everybody else to get the vaccine and all this other stuff? It's like, do you like condemn the media? Do you condemn this? Like, Piers is such a fucking hypocrite. It's so funny watching him. But it's funny because there is no responsibility. Like, the media doesn't have any responsibility. Like, Alex Jones says something that they say is, false and hurts people, and he gets fined $1.5 billion, and the media says a bunch of stuff that kills a bunch of people and there's no repercussions. Like, how does that work? Like, at what point is there repercussions and at what point isn't there?
How did that period of life feel, given that you were going through this deceleration transition? detoxing or whatever you want to say, like rehabbing from hedonism, whilst also going through this public scrutiny, whilst also there's a global pandemic, which has kind of shut the world and your lifestyle down. Did that get to you?
It felt like I was going through hell, but honestly, not because of any of those reasons as much as the edit of the book, because I did 37 edits of this book. And every time I finished an edit, I was positive that it was done. And then I would reread it, and then I would start changing shit, and I'd start fucking with shit. And it was just like, I just felt like I was in purgatory. I literally felt like I was in hell. Like I felt like every day I had like an overwhelming homework assignment that I was never going to be able to finish. And I had to go to school, and you know what I mean? It was just like, I don't know, like school without ever getting summer break or a weekend off or whatever. Cause I did it every single day. I took no days off, and it was like 12 hours on. I would sleep for like whatever, 4 hours. Then I would do like 8 hours. Then I'd sleep for, it was just like, I didn't even get like a full night's sleep. It was just like constant. And what I found is that if I worked for more than like 8 hours without sleeping, then my mind, I would actually do like harm. I would do more harm than good. And then I had to re-edit, and it was just, I don't know. It was a lot, but the crazy part is the talking shit, the pandemic, all this stuff, like none of it was as bad as the book. I mean, quitting all the stuff and kind of like I guess, like just a lack of dopamine, because if you go from just having just massive spikes all the time, I don't know. It's kind of like having withdrawal. I mean, you do have some kind of withdrawals. I mean, the not smoking weed, like, and I was smoking weed every day. Like I went a period of like 3 or 4 years where I never had sex without smoking weed. And I was fucking like 3 to 4 times a day, every day. I wouldn't even work out unless I was high. It was just like a lot of weed. And so, I think your body just gets used to that. People say that weed's not addictive, but I think it's like one of the most addictive things. And so that was a hard one to quit. The sex addiction wasn't quite as hard because I did have, like this, hot 18-year-old girl running around like, in lingerie all day, like, begging me to bang her. So I didn't really kind of like stop. And it's not like I stopped having sex, but I stopped with the craziness. But it was a tough time. That was like a pretty dark time. It was like you go from this like top of the world pleasure seeking dopamine spike over and over and over and over again all the time. Every time you're the man, you're the greatest thing and all this shit. And then, like having to deal with negativity, and then also the pandemic where you can't do shit and the world's in chaos. We've never been more divided. We've never been more racist. Like the country's just like tearing itself apart. And I'm kind of like locked in the house, and I'm doing this edit. And it was just like, it was a lot.
It's just you in a Word document for comfort.
Yeah. And an 18-year-old in lingerie, occasionally, and my 2 cats,
Fucking everything's got a silver lining. What's your approach when it comes to sort of public scrutiny? Do you get sort of sad or riled up, or does your self-esteem or confidence or whatever take a hit from things like that? There's very few people that spend so much time crafting a public image to then have it be derogated rightly or wrongly or falsely or legitimately or whatever. But for that to then happen and you not feel indignation at it being wrong, or you not feeling shame at it being right.
Yeah. I mean, it was one of those things where, I've been famous for 12 years, and like on a pretty large scale, to where every country and every place of the world, like people are coming up to me all the time, nonstop. And I feel like in the beginning of it, I didn't deserve it. And like all these people were telling me all this stuff. And I was just like, I don't think I'm the greatest guy on the
imposter syndrome.
planet. Like, I don't think I'm, like, yeah, I'm doing it, but I'm also, that kid that didn't get a lot of pussy in high school and whatever. And everybody's got their insecurities. So you don't feel like you deserve as much praise as you're getting. And then I got to a point where I felt like, I was the man. I was throwing the best parties in the world. I was fucking the hottest girls. I was doing all this shit, and I have been doing it for, a super long time. And so maybe I do deserve it, but I don't really care. And I think during the entire process, like I'd gotten a ton of negativity. Like honestly, like my biggest spikes in fame were from negative things, like throwing a girl off the roof. Like I just like am chucking bitches off the roof like it's something to do. Like it was like a Hustler photo shoot. They asked me to do it. Like this girl like held on to my shirt, and almost killed me in the process, but it wasn't my idea. It wasn't just like I was just randomly doing this drunk on a Tuesday. Like, it was for a photo shoot, controlled environment where they asked me to do it. But that wasn't the headline, right? But whatever, like I said, I got a lot of negative press. And then all that negative press kind of like, catapulted me forward. And I was doing the social experiment to see how much, how famous I could get and whatever. And it was kind of like went off the rails and it kind of turned into its own thing. And then I would say around maybe 2021-ish or so, kind of the time that I was getting a lot of the shitty press or whatever, I think I've developed more confidence in the last like 3 or 4 years than I've ever had in my entire life, because I don't need anybody to tell me that I'm great. It doesn't really bother me if people tell me that I'm not. And I have like a higher, self-value than I ever have before, because I know what I've accomplished, because I spent 2 years reflecting on it and writing about it and like realizing like how much, effort a lot of this stuff took. And I also kind of like, got a lot of confidence in like who I was as a person and like the things that I've done, and the fact that I haven't sold out and I haven't done, I guess things that would compromise your value system for money or for fame or whatever. Like, I think a lot of other guys have done that.
Have you got any times where there was an offer on the table that was tempting, or that you would thought, oh, I mean, that's a lot of something for me to compromise my values?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, I got offered $3 million to do one post about a crypto coin. I got offered millions and millions of dollars to do an NFT post, and things that I felt like would lose people money or whatever. Tens of millions of dollars for gambling sites or whatever.
Come and be a stake.com kick partner and live stream you playing Plinko balls or whatever.
All that shit, and it's like, I really feel like gambling is a net negative. Like, I think it's just bad. Obviously the house ends up with the money. It's not the answer. A lot of guys want this get rich quick thing or whatever.
It's an interest, just to sit on that. It's a really interesting point that everybody gets accused and gets the finger pointed at them for all of the bad things that they do, and some of the bad things that they have been accused of doing. But nobody ever gets given plus points for the bad things that they didn't do. No one knows the podcast guests that would have done huge plays, and many of the people brought on, but ethically I didn't feel were virtuous. Like, I don't get any points for the bad things that no one knows that I didn't do. All of the stuff that you say no to. And that's an interesting point, during the NFT and crypto phase, where anybody, I mean, that would have been the whatever, like Bill's coin or some shit, would have been a huge cash grab. The distribution circulation that you would have had with that. I totally didn't think about it, but that's that's like a
well, I think it's different if you do your own coin, because then you have some control over it. But just promoting somebody else's rug, that I wouldn't feel right about. That I think is fucked up, because like, they're going to pay me because they're going to rug it, and they're going to take the money, and the people that I'm going to send to invest are going to lose. So it's kind of like,
all of those people are your exit liquidity.
Yeah, exactly. So, I look, I mean, there's been plenty of coins that have done well, like Doge, that made a bunch of money.
Shiba Inu, blah, blah.
Yeah, I mean, because the whole premise of crypto is like kind of this decentralized thing that allows people to bet on. Like, the stock market is rigged, and people that, they saw it in the GameStop stuff, like they those guys like bad. Like, they halted trading. They did all this stuff. Like, finally, like, the good guys are going to win, and they still fucked them. So exactly. So it's kind of like crypto is maybe like one of the last things that isn't really a rigged market if done right. And I think that's some of the appeal. And you can't inflate it like the government's inflating the dollar and whatever. So I do believe in crypto, but yeah, I wasn't going to do any of the, the bullshit promo stuff. But I think the confidence that I have is just in kind of like knowing that I'm a good person, not necessarily, I mean, like, not doing bad things I think is important too. But like, I think you get your real confidence from knowing that like you will suffer for the right thing. You will not quit. You will have follow through. You'll do the things that you know, believe in. You'll stand for the things that may fuck you. You know what I mean? Like, you'll say what's on your mind regardless of the outcome. Like, that's the stuff I think that you get real confidence from, because look, anybody can do things that are easy. You know, it's like, how do you behave when things are difficult or when the shit hits the fan? That's what defines you. Not like, you know, are you the nice guy? Do you take a bunch of photos when everybody's sucking your dick? You know, it's like, not do you, you know, whatever, wave for the crowd. Like, you know, it's just, it's easy to behave well when things are going good. But I think it's like how you behave when you know there's going to be negative consequences for what you do or what you say. And I think when you stand up for what you believe in, regardless of the consequences, even when you know the consequences are going to be bad, I think that's when you get the real confidence.
It's interesting that your desire for self-esteem or your lack of confidence originally is one of the things that drives you to make a ton of money and then sleep with loads of women and then have all of these peak experiences. And then you end up, it's like The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, where you end up going all the way back around to just stick to your words, say things that you believe are true, do hard things when you can. It's basically like a philosophical equivalent of Navy SEAL Hell Week.
Yeah, like King Solomon, you know. It's like, I think you have to have some real insecurities to drive you to go to the ends of the earth, you know, like the David Goggins stuff. Like, he has to have some demons, you know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things where, and, you know, and back to the Chinese farmer, it's like, you know, sometimes those insecurities help you, you know, sometimes those are good things. Sometimes they drive you. Sometimes they give you the motivation to continue when you otherwise would have quit. So
that's one of the, I guess, liberating or reassuring or maybe actually disenchanting things of the last few years of my life, meeting more and more successful and rich and famous people and realizing that on average, most of them are more miserable than the average person. That a lot of the people are driven by a sense of insufficiency or a requirement for validation or, you know, a parent that didn't care enough about them or what the bully said in school or whatever it might be. And Andrew Wilkinson, guy that founded Tiny, billionaire, he says, most successful people are just a walking anxiety disorder harnessed for productivity. And I think, you know, there's definitely outliers in there. There's tons of people that have managed to find the correct balance between hedonism, between what they look for from everybody else, how they feel about themselves, the world's view of them, their view of them. But there's definitely a kind of irony in the most admired people often having the least admirable internal states. You know, if you could just take a little holiday to their mental landscape as their head hits the pillow on an evening time and go, holy no, thank you. I do not want that at all. Like, there's a great interview Lex Friedman did with Elon Musk maybe last year, and Elon sort of very solemnly looks Lex in the eyes and he says, most people think that they would want to be me. They don't want to be me. They don't know. They don't understand. My mind is a storm. You're like, holy fuck. Like, this is the robot dancing on stage at Japan convention, Tesla firing rockets into space guy. And meanwhile, he sounds like he's having an existential crisis. And you go, well, yeah, because what is it that drives somebody internally and what do you see of them externally? And it doesn't, a lot of the time, I don't think you would pay the price that you would need to be the person that you admire.
Yeah, I mean, there's that. And also just money doesn't solve the problems. Like, people think that it does. It actually perpetuates a lot of problems.
How so?
Because it exacerbates them. It puts them on a larger scale. More people are, you know, wanting something from you. It's harder to determine, you know, people are there for the right reasons. You know, you've got more staff, you've got more responsibility, you've got more things pulling your energy. Now you've got, you know, 4 houses to, you know, manage. You've got a jet. You've got, you know, I mean, I have like 22 staff members, you know. It's
private life is just as complex as your professional life.
I mean, managing staff is just like managing girls, you know. It's like eventually you just get to a point where like you don't want to manage all this shit. Like, you don't, you know, and so then you hire somebody to manage that. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, it's outsourcing, but you're basically like running a company. Like, I've got multiple chefs. I've got, you know, house cleaners. I've got a bunch of assistants. I've got, you know, just all this staff, right? But then the staff has to manage the staff, and it's a whole thing, right? And what is it all for? Just so you don't have to make your bed and cook your food and whatever. Because like last week, I just went up to Minnesota, saw family. I had my grandmother's funeral, and then I went to Canada, and we live basically like in the woods. We got got a cabin up there, but there's, we have to use propane, and there's an outhouse, and we have power only because of the generator.
Effort.
And, it's a lot, like it's basically like I'm cooking my own meals. I was doing all my own shit. And I just realized like how many things were done for me. But at the same time, like I didn't really need it. Like it was just kind of nice to be able to just be self-sufficient for 3 or 4 days. There's no cell service, so I never looked at my cell phone. It's kind of nice. Like it was just good to unplug and just realize like I don't actually need all this shit.
We'll get back to talking to Dan in 1 minute, but first I need to tell you about 8 Sleep. I've been using my 8 Sleep mattress for years, and I absolutely love it. I used to find myself waking up in the middle of the night, feeling groggy in the morning, and temperature was almost always to blame. 8 Sleep's newest generation pod, the Pod 4 Ultra, is here, and it can cool down each side of the bed to 20 degrees below room temperature. And for those who snore heavily, it can literally detect your snoring and automatically lift your head a few degrees to improve airflow and stop it. And it is clinically proven to give you up to 1 hour more of quality sleep every night. Best of all, they ship to the United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Europe, and Australia. Plus, there is a 30-day sleep trial, so you can buy it, sleep on it for 29 days, and if you do not like it, they will give you your money back. Right now, you can get $350 off the Pod 4 Ultra by going to the link in the description below or heading to 8sleep.com/modernwisdom and using the code modernwisdom at checkout. That's EIGHT sleep.com/modernwisdom and modernwisdom at checkout. What have you learned about where money does, or how you can spend money well?
A lot of ways. So a tool. I mean, it's a tool to get what you want. It's a tool to save time. It's a tool to, set up an environment to, bring what you want to you. Like, it could help you with women. It could help you with a lot of things. And so it's just, it's one of those things where I think people want it for the wrong reasons. And I think a lot of people that get it don't know how to use it. But it's valuable. I mean, it allows you to, travel the world when you want. It allows you to tell people, fuck you. That's the biggest thing, honestly. Like that's the reason I always wanted money, is just to tell people, fuck you. And it's always funny to me to see guys like The Rock or whatever, that's like still like punching the narrative, still doing what he's told, still, like giving the speeches, endorsing, like just like, who's your master? Like, what the fuck are you doing? You got $400 million. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, why are you answering to anybody? Like, why is anybody influencing what you say? Like, be your own person. You have enough. Like, when you get to a point where like you can't spend your money, the idea of like being a slave to money is crazy to me.
I heard you say not long ago, maybe within the last few years, that you wanted to make $1 billion, and that was this kind of, you knew, arbitrary, sort of pointless number to get to. Is that still on the list? Or is that something that you've been able to deprogram?
I've been able to deprogram it. That was one of the things. And I saw this in my life. Like I was sure that $1 million was like enough. Like I needed $1 million. And then it was 5 million, and then it was 10 million, and it was 50, and then it was 100, and it was like 500. It was always like a fucking another number, and it was never enough, and it's never going to be enough. And, I just realized that I got happiness from like helping other people and doing things that I enjoyed doing. So I need to focus on that. It's actually pretty simple. It's not like a real complex.
So it's problem. Not, I was going to say, one of the themes here is definitely sort of simplifying rather than adding complexity. Lots of goals, lots of complexity, lots of staff, lots of complexity, lots of money, managing that, obligations, this party that I need to run or go to or whatever. I've heard you say that, most of the parties that you ran when you were in that phase in LA, you didn't really get any chance to enjoy yourself because you were the guy on the door and making sure that everybody else is having a good night, and you're organizing this and organizing that, despite presumably a fucking ton of the staff or whatever that are there to help you. And increasingly, it seems to me that the best ways that people who have money spend money is to actually simplify life rather than make it more complex. But the natural sort of root of having money is more things and more people and more complexity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, like you realize that you value peace. Like just not headaches, not stress, not girls fighting, not energy being pulled in a million directions. And so, yeah, I would say I prioritize peace more now than I did before. I had like no peace before. So I don't know, man, I'm not like an extremist. I just go all the way this direction, all the way this direction. And yeah, doing those parties is a nightmare. I mean, there was like one point. I distinctly remember one point when I actually enjoyed the party, and it was maybe for 10 minutes. But I was, and I'll never forget it because it was like, and I ended the book on it. I was in a day bed and I had like 20 girls crawling all over me, grabbing me. And I was like, my Quaalude had kicked in and I was happy, and Alesso and Carnage and Diplo were all fucking DJing all at the same time. And like, it was like, I looked out, there's nothing but hot chicks and a few celebrities and whatever. And I just realized at that moment, like I had thrown like one of the best parties that's ever been thrown in the fucking world, like hands down. I know it for a fact. And there was like some sense of accomplishment there, and, but I realized like this was at the top. Like I couldn't do a better party. There was 3,000 girls. There's like 300 celebrities. And it was just like, you couldn't have done a better party. There was like the best DJ and the best, whatever, all this shit, Cirque du Soleil performers. And, yeah, that was a mountain that I wanted to climb. Like
you ever tempted to spin it up for one last time?
I mean,
there it is.
Maybe one more, but like that's not, but like just to do it, just like fuck it, why not? But not because I feel any obligation to do it, and I feel like I did it because of obligation before. I mean, it is fun to throw a good party because people have a good time, and it's something that they remember. But it is a pain in the ass, man. Like it's to do it the way I wanted to do it. I lost a lot of friends, because like I wouldn't let guys come in there. I wanted the ratio to be right. Like, pissed off a lot of celebrities, but they were great. The parties were awesome. I mean, for the people that were there. So, and that's what I wanted to do. I always wanted to like go to a Playboy party, and then I went to a Playboy party, and it was cool. And I fucked a girl in the grotto, and I thought like, man, like I've done it. And then I threw a party that was better than the Playboy party, and now I was like, okay, now I've really done it. That's enough.
Did you pivot to monogamy?
Did.
How's that?
But I'm not like some proponent that like you have to be monogamous. I just found that it's just the natural state. Like, and people want to always say like, the only animals that are monogamous are gay-ass dolphins and all this shit. But like, or whatever. It's like a natural thing in the animal kingdom for the alpha male to fuck all the chicks. And like, I get it, like I argued that too. And I did, I fucked a lot of chicks. But I think that when you actually really like a girl and when she really likes you or you're in love or whatever, it's not worth the pain that it causes her to fuck other girls. That's what I landed on. So it wasn't so much, and I also didn't need it too. Like I didn't need to stick my dick in a bunch of girls. Like I've done that. And I think that because I've done that, it actually gives you a unique ability to be monogamous. Cause I think if you're some dude from Wisconsin and you're married after sleeping with 2 chicks and some hot chick hits on you, the rest of your life, you're gonna be like, damn, like what would that have been like?
I wonder what.
Exactly. Like, well, and I think it would almost be impossible not to be like that. Versus if you've had sex with a lot of girls, you know what you like, you know what you don't like. You probably appreciate the girl that you landed on more so, and you just won't have the wandering eye. So I'm also a proponent of getting out there and hooking up with a decent amount of girls, seeing what you like, dating around, figuring it out, not putting pressure, not getting married because society tells you should get married. I'm not saying I even agree in marriage, but like a monogamous relationship, I think is probably the goal. Is where you should, want to end, because I think that's where you'll be the happiest because you can focus on your shit. You're not distracted. And it's pretty easy to keep one girl happy. I did it with like 100. So like one is peace. One is very simple.
I remember one of my friends when I was back in the UK was sort of really hardcore into pickup artistry and Kino escalation. And when, Neil Strauss in the game and mystery and all of that stuff was coming around, I remember him saying over dinner one evening, he said, my future wife better appreciate all of this effort I'm putting in. I'm like, you're going to have to explain to me how you like plate spinning 15 WhatsApp chicks at once is an investment in your future wife. He says, well, look, when I'm walking down the street with my 2.5 kids and the golden retriever and my wife, I don't want to look at a Brazilian chick and think, I wonder what it's like to fuck a Brazilian chick. So he's like, really? I'm doing this for my future wife. And I'm like, it might be some roundabout kind of logic. But as you're saying here, there are some lessons for some people, like unique constitutions. And so for one person, it might be money. For another person, it might be fame. For another person, it might be women. For other people, it might be all of them. That you need to check boxes in order to close those loops.
There's that. And then I think also you get more confidence. And I think a lot of people cheat out of insecurity. And so I think by dating a bunch of women and by getting confidence and realizing that, women are attracted to you and they like you, this may not have been as true for you, Mr. GQ model growing up. You probably didn't have trouble getting pussy or whatever.
I was a very ugly,
were you?
Very ugly guy until I was about 19. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, I think for most guys, there's probably, because there's a lot of different attraction triggers. There's the common ones that guys think about, but there's a bunch of other ones that are actually really powerful. And, like pre-selection, for instance, like just having a bunch of girls around you that are interested in you will absolutely unequivocally make hot girls want to fuck you. And I've seen it, more so than good looks, because I went on vacation with Bill. Here's a good looking guy worth $500 million, funny, smart, like all the things that guys think that they need. He went 4 days on a deserted island with 36 hot girls and didn't fuck a single girl. And not for a lack of trying. He literally tried to fuck every single girl there and they all said no. Okay. So that was one of the things that, in deconstructing this course that I realized was like the things that guys think they need is not what they need, because I've seen guys with every single, and it's not like he didn't get pussy. I mean, I fucked 10 girls with him at one time before that, trip. So like, it's not like he wasn't confident. He was a D1 football player. The guy got girls. So he had all the things, confidence, experience, whatever. The guy's, set up being on a deserted island with 36 girls that can only him. I mean, I think the security guard got laid, but anyway, the point is, he was doing the most common thing that guys do, which is he was over-communicating interest to women. And what he did is he just over-communicated interest and he hit on women in the traditional sense that guys think is correct to get girls. He hit on them, gave them compliments, whatever. But he blew himself out with every girl because he over-communicated interest. And what I told him in the fourth day was like, dude, you need to just chill the fuck out. Like, stop over-communicating interest. Stop acting, reeking of desperation. Stop acting like if you don't get laid, you're going to die, And on the fourth day, sure enough, he chilled the fuck out. He fucked 4 girls, and like met his wife, had a few threesomes, like everything was good. And, and it was just a small shift. And so that's what I've seen is like, small shifts can have a big impact on the outcome. And I just think a lot of people are just doing the wrong thing.
What is your opinion on modern advice for men? We're talking about crisis of masculinity, men struggling with their role in the world, whether it's financially, professionally, existentially, with women. What do you make of the current landscape of advice for men?
I think it's a fucking disaster, like an unequivocal disaster. The current landscape is atrocious, which is why I spent the last 2 years doing this. And like I talked to you about this about a year ago. I actually didn't even know the fuck you were. I was just like, sharp guys at Bill's house, probably good dude, whatever. And like, we rapped about this, and then, and then I found out that, you were famous too, and you had a podcast and all this stuff, and, and you knew about this stuff and you're interested. But like at the time we talked, it was just like, 2 guys chopping it up about this, and like, you got it. Like I saw that like you understood the problem. And I don't know. I just like, I look out and I just see them getting the wrong advice, doing the wrong things, having bad results. And then the problem is they're quitting. Like that's the biggest problem. It's not that they're not getting pussy, but that they're quitting. And I think the problem today is that guys have maps of the wrong directions. And before 40, 50 years ago, even when we were kids, like we didn't really have directions. It's just like we saw some shit in the movies, right? We had some good stuff like what James Bond did. And then we had the bad stuff, the rom-coms. But like we didn't really have like the bad directions that we have today. And this attack on masculinity and all this stuff, which is like just a recipe for horrendous results. And also coupled by the fact that women, because of social media, now think that they deserve like this crazy guy that maybe they could fuck, but that's not going to date them seriously. And then they have experiences with those type of guys, which exacerbates the problem. And then they end up marrying some guy that's worth $100 million. It's just like happy because they're hot and doesn't realize that they've like fucked half the, NFL football team and whatever, and then the girl doesn't really respect that guy because she, has all these other previous guys to compare him to. Plus the fact that she doesn't really think of herself as being like, that high value because she hasn't been able to date any of the guys that she actually really wanted. Right. So it's like creates this landscape of unhappiness on both sides for men and women.
Expectations, cynicism. Yeah. There's a big trend of cynicism around dating advice for guys. And I think, as you said, a lot of them are checking out. How cynical or hopeful do you think guys should be when it comes to the dating market?
I mean, if they do the right things, there's hope for everybody. I mean, look, I was not a guy that was supposed to get hardly any pussy. And I didn't. Like in high school, like I lost my virginity to a Mexican hooker, like, and then we went a couple years out of that, we finally figured it out, like, and had sex again, but like not much, and then the military, I like did terrible. I would like go up to every girl with the typical, like, oh, I think you're beautiful. Can I buy you a drink line? And obviously that's going to do terrible because that's like just setting yourself up for failure. You're over communicating interest. It puts the girl in a position of like, I can have this guy, do I want him? And when you look at something like that, it's like all the flaws magnify. It's like when somebody tries to sell you something, they pitch you really hard, you automatically look at all the reasons why you potentially shouldn't buy this, right? Well, it's no different in dating. So when a guy comes up and like lays it on real thick and is just like, oh, I'm just going to be honest, I'm just going to tell her how I feel and like all this bullshit. And like, and it just runs her right the off because she doesn't respond to that because in her, past experience, all those guys that have come up are usually like the needy guys and whatever. And so I had the wrong approach and I got shitty results. And then, in college, I kind of started to figure it out because the ratio was better and my approach was different. And so when I started like, not over communicating interest and we had these situations where women would come talk to us, like I had a glimpse of like, okay, I'm the same guy here, but I'm getting way better results here. Why? And that was like the first time, and I read the game. And so I got a little bit of an insight on it. And I would say the game was kind of like similar to like our poker theory in the beginning. It's like, it's an idea. Some of it's right, but some of it's really wrong too. And I don't think that, people are even close to figuring out what is like actually effective. I did a pretty good job. Like I laid out like a good framework of like the common mistakes that guys are making, what you can do, correctly, hacks, like, just mindset shifts. Like
traveling should be about the journey, not the chaos of packing, which is why I'm in love with Nomatic's backpacks and their carry-ons. I'm on the road. I'm here in Vegas. Then I'm going to LA, then back to Vegas, then to a wedding in Italy, and I'm doing it all on hand luggage. Hold luggage is a psyop meant to keep you poor and late. You don't need it, and this thing is the Swiss Army knife of travel packs. They've got pockets for your laptop, your clothes, your snacks. It is so organized that even your toothbrush will feel important. It's like the Marie Kondo of luggage. They ship internationally and they offer free shipping on orders over $49 in the United States. Plus, if you don't love your purchase for any reason, you can return or exchange it within 30 days. So you can buy it, fill it with your possessions for 29 days, and if you don't like it, they'll give you your money back. Right now, you can get a 20% discount off everything site-wide by going to the link in the description below or heading to nomatic.com/modernwisdom and using the code MW20 at checkout. That's nomatic.com/modernwisdom and MW20 at checkout. Break it down for me. What are the common assumptions, the biggest ones that are holding guys back when it comes to attracting women? What are the reframes or the best strategies that you've deconstructed from yourself?
Okay. So the most common problems I would say would be some mindsets, like, limiting beliefs is a big one. Like thinking like, oh, I'm not tall, so women aren't going to be attracted to me, or I'm not rich, so I can't get women, or, like all these reasons why they're not attracted.
Do those things not matter? No,
they don't matter at all. Like at all. Like the things that actually can make a woman pursue you or chase you or be interested in you. Like, Bill's a perfect example. He had all the things, not one, not two, not three. He had every single thing that guys think that they need to get women.
Plus a desert island.
Desert island with 36 girls. Like you couldn't get a better scenario. So like that is literal proof that like all these things,
still didn't get laid.
Exactly. That's not going to solve your problem because here's a guy that had all those things and he still didn't do it. Right. And I have another sample of a bunch of guys in my fraternity that were short, that didn't have money, that weren't that smart, all this stuff, and they got a ton of pussy. So like, I just know that it's not the traditional things that guys think that they need. That's a part of it. But I think like I said, when I kind of like deconstructed it, the biggest epiphany that I had was the difference of when you are chasing a woman or you're pursuing a woman versus when she's pursuing you. And like the flaws disappearing on both sides. When a woman's chasing you, your flaws disappear, her flaws magnify. Just like when the really, stage 5 clinger girl hits you up all the time, it's just like, you're not interested in her. Maybe she can suck your dick on a Friday night if you strike out at 3 a.m. Right. But like, the same thing's true for women is like when these guys massively over communicate interest, they know they can have them. And then it's like a conversation of, do they want them? And when you're looking at flaws, you're going to find them. Like you've got flaws. I've got flaws. Like everybody has flaws. Right. So when you're looking for flaws, they stand out. But when you're pursuing something, like think an auction, like 5 guys want something, 5 guys are bidding for something, and like you really want it. And you have this like, idea in your mind of like when you wanted something, you didn't get it, and this fear of loss. You're not thinking about what's wrong with it. You're just, how do I get it? Right. Just like, and this is probably the most common mistake guys make is they're like, this girl's hot. How do I fuck her? That's the thought process. Like, oh my God, she's so beautiful. Like, I would marry that girl. How many times have you heard a guy say like, oh my God, she's so hot, I would marry her? It's like, what if she has AIDS? What if she's a pathological liar? What if she's like 95,000 guys? What if she's just like a serial cheater? Like, what if this girl has massive problems? What if she's bipolar? What if she's got a massive alcohol problem? Whatever, right? Like, dig a little bit deeper, like be discerning, like go into the interaction, like wanting to find out more about the girl, not just accepting her looks as being enough. And I think that's the biggest problem that guys make, is that they just like the looks are enough. And then the conversation is like, how do I get her to like me? So you're already going in there with a handicap. Like when a salesman comes in, like he's already coming in from a handicap, versus like when somebody goes into the store because they need milk, they just go to the aisle, they find the milk and they buy it. Versus if you show up at the door and you try and sell them milk, then be like, oh, well, who is this guy? Is the milk old? Can I trust this? You know what I mean? Like the difference, like when you want something, it's just like, how do I get it? It's not, the same conversation. And so that would be the biggest thing. And I figured that out because I had a big sample size of girls that wanted to fuck me that I screwed it up with, and a big sample size of girls that wanted to fuck me that I also had sex with. And I think that's like, look, in a experiment, you have to have the control group. Right? Most guys do not have the control group. Like I literally had girls sending me butt naked photos on Instagram. I want to f you. And I screwed it up with those girls. So I'm just saying, like, only in like cross comparing what worked and what didn't work with 2 sample sizes of girls that both wanted to sleep with me could I figure it out.
Given that you're the same guy to both of them.
Exactly. Cause like, there's girls that just like wouldn't want to sleep with me because I'm Armenian or I have a shitty haircut or whatever, right? Like there's going to be girls that just like wouldn't fuck me, period. So because I had that sample that I knew that they wanted to sleep with me and I screwed it up, I was able to like figure out the things that I was doing wrong. And like one of the big things that I was doing wrong was like I was over communicating interest. I would have problems with the girls that I was like, oh damn, like this girl's hot, she's different, or like, or I really like her or whatever. And my approach would change. And because my approach would change, my results would change.
What about the sort of treat them mean to keep them keen / not signaling sufficient interest that that girl doesn't actually end up responding to you at all? I think, well, he's not interested, so this doesn't go anywhere.
So I wouldn't say treat them mean. I would say change your default setting from nice to challenging. Because like a lot of these guys, like they aren't really nice guys. Like, oh, like, I just want to be, it's like, you're not that nice to the fat chick. You're not that nice to the janitor. You're nice to this girl because you want to fuck her, So like this whole idea of like, oh, I'm just being myself, or like, that's another one. It's like, I just want to be myself. Like I want her to like me for me. And it's like, okay, well, there's different versions of you. There's a version of you in an Armani suit. There's a version of you dressed like shit. There's a version of you where you like take care of your diet and work out and like, work at your job. And there's a version of you that just like succumbs to every one of your impulses. Like, like I drive by McDonald's and like, I just want to eat fries, but I don't, like I want to have Snickers all day, but I don't, like you can make yourself better. And I think, a lot of guys don't do that. Like a lot of guys are just like, I want a girl to like me for me.
So get tactical for a moment with regards to guy has girl that he thinks she's hot, she's interesting, I want to pursue her. What is a better tactical way of moving toward that? What should they do?
Well, I mean, I would not start the interaction by over communicating interest, number one. So I would go up and, have a conversation with her. I mean, I've asked girls crazy stuff. I take like a pretty extreme approach, and I wouldn't recommend this for, all guys, but like I'll ask girls crazy questions. Like me and my buddy were having a conversation the other day, and like he was like, I think I was arguing that I think you have a lower chance of getting a serious rejection if you put a girl's hand on your dick than if you go for a kiss. And this is after a girl's into you and like you guys have been on a date or whatever, and there's like, some chemistry, whatever. And he was like, you're out of your mind, like this, that, and the other. And I was like, okay, well, let's ask some girls. So like, I just would go up to a girl and I'd be like, hey, like this is the question. Like, what do you, I wouldn't frame like who was on which side, but like they wanted an answer. So they gave their answer. And now all of a sudden we're in a sexual conversation with a girl where I haven't communicated any interest to her at all. And I've almost like disqualified her because I'm asking her this question that like usually wouldn't ask.
Not about you.
Exactly. You wouldn't ask a girl that you're trying to like hook up with because it's like a crazy question too. Yep. And so I'm not saying that that would be, you know, the optimal approach, but I'm just saying like that's something that like most guys wouldn't think to do, but that it's more successful than going up, over communicating interest, putting a girl in a position where like she has to decide like accept or reject. And usually when they're like forced to accept or reject, usually reject is the default. And if it's not, then they're probably a whore. If they just like accept every guy that comes up to them.
This is your chasing versus choosing paradigm.
Well, yeah. So, you know, get into the interaction and, you know, the caveat to that is like what you say to a girl isn't necessarily how important is like how you say it. So you could go up and say some really stupid shit to open the conversation. It doesn't really matter. Like as long as you get in there without massively over communicating interest. Right. And then I would say be discerning, you know, be challenging, like, you know, ask questions, dig deeper, get a little bit of information about her, you know? I mean, Neil Strauss had a good one when he was on with Jessica Alba and he said, you know, looks are common in LA. Aside from your looks, like what would your friends say are the 3, you know, best qualities about you? And like in that one question, he immediately like pulled away her looks, which was like one of her strongest attributes. Like nobody give a fuck about Jessica Alba if she's ugly, right? So it's literally like her superpower. He just sucked it right out of the conversation. He's also digging deeper. And now he's got her in a position of like qualifying herself to him and selling herself to him. She's telling him why she's good, you know? And so that would be a much better start of an interaction than like, you know, I think you're so beautiful. Like I just had to come over here and, you know, by the way, I'm a doctor, you know, and I drive a Lamborghini and like all this bullshit. The guys like, you know, they try and brag about themselves. They're doing all these things. And the girl's just like in a position of like, okay, you know, like, do I want this? That's the conversation usually between guys and girls is like, the girl's like, okay, do I want this guy? It's like playing poker and the guys just like turn over their cards. And so I would say like, you know, dig a little bit deeper, be discerning, like find out about the girl, like, you know, decide. And then if you want to give her a compliment on like something that's unique about her, something that's like she earned or, you know, not just like she was born with, you know, like if she has pretty eyes, I'm sure she's heard that from a million guys. Like, don't tell her she has pretty eyes, you know, like just be different. I mean, I guess like a big epiphany I had too was like when I became famous, you know, and I just talk about this in there too, is like, understanding a hot girl's mind, because when I became famous, like I understood what it was like to be a hot chick. And I understood that in the sense of like, I had forced interactions wherever the fuck I would go, whether it was a Starbucks, whether it was, you know, wherever, like I had people coming up to me and the same thing is true of a girl. Like when she goes to get her mail, when she goes to the grocery store, like guys are hitting on her all the time. So it's forced interactions. And what I notice is the first 100 times guys would come up to me and be like, bro, you're the man, blah, 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 like, you know, all this shit. I was like, okay, cool, you know, whatever. And I always take the pictures, you know, but I guess what I'm trying to, you know, explain with that is, let's say you are a famous guy and a guy comes up to you and like, bro, you're the man, dude, like all this shit. And you've heard this 10,000 times. Is that going to make you want to have a beer with that guy? No. Like maybe you'll take a photo with him, you'll tell him you appreciate it, but it's not going to make you want to like hang out with him. Now, if that guy comes up to you and is like, hey man, you know, I only got a second, but I just want to tell you like, you know, I really like this, you know, maybe the guy's a rock star. I really like this song that you did. And he told him a song that he did like in the garage. He's like, and I had that same guitar that you had and whatever. And then he's just like kind of excusing himself on the way out. Maybe that rock star like wants to have a conversation with him. Oh shit, that guitar, you know, that was like one of my favorite guitars, you know, like now you're coming at it from a different angle. And I would say the same thing is true with hot girls is like, if you go up and say the same shit that all these other guys have said to these girls, you're going to have the same knee-jerk reaction. The walls are going to go up. Mm-hmm. She's going to remember the last 20 times she got caught in a 30-minute conversation with some idiot talking her ear off. And she knows that the guy just wants to fuck her because she's built no value, right? Like early on in the conversation, if you compliment her a bunch before she's earned it, and it's kind of like you're telling her indirectly, you're hot,
above me.
You're above me and your looks are good enough. I don't even care if you have flaws. Like you're hot. And so that's enough for me. And I'm ready to date you.
For the last 3 years, I've started my morning with Element. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything that you need and nothing that you don't. Each grab and go stick contains an evidence-based blend of electrolytes, including magnesium, potassium, and sodium with no sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, or any other junk. Sodium plays a critical role in reducing muscle cramps and fatigue whilst optimizing brain health, regulating appetite, and curbing cravings. You might not need more caffeine. You might not be tired or underslept. You might just be dehydrated. And proper hydration is not just about drinking sufficient water. It's about having the right electrolytes to allow your body to use those fluids. There is a no BS, no questions asked, unlimited duration returns policy. So you can buy it for as long as you want, try it, and if you do not like it for any reason, they'll give you your money back and you don't even need to return the box. Right now, you can get a free sample pack of all 8 flavors with your first box by going to the link in the show notes below or heading to drinklmnt.com/modern wisdom. That's drinklmnt.com/modern wisdom. It's so funny, that kind of playground mentality of, if I know that I can have it, I don't want it. And it's so funny how that seems to be in your worldview like a fundamental part of the physics of this
translates
system.
to everything. It's sales, it's negotiation, it's business, it's all these things.
The person that can walk away from the deal is the one that holds the most power.
Always.
So here's a big one. How do guys not get intimidated or nervous by hot women?
Well, there's like the correct way, and then there's hacks. You can just like pretend like the girl has chlamydia. If you like mentally kind of like register like she has chlamydia, and like you wouldn't fuck her even if she wanted to fuck you, you're going to interact differently with that girl. And so that would be like the first hack to just like tell a guy, you know what I mean? Like if they go up to a super hot chick and they're just otherwise going to be really giddy and, nervous and just like excited, and all they can think about is like, how do I get this girl to like me? And then that they're actually on a date with the girl, which they probably never will be, should I make a move now? All this shit, right? But like, if you give her chlamydia, you just like suck all that out, then you take away that anxiety. He's not thinking about like, how do I have sex with her? He's not thinking about like, should I make a move now? And he's going to interact with her differently, and that's one of the things is like interact with these girls. Like they don't have a bunch of power over you. Like you don't need them. Neediness is not attractive. Right. And I think that's one of the things that guys subcommunicate when they, over compliment, when they over chase, when they do a lot of things that guys do, is they just put themselves in a category of like, the needy guy, which is most men. And if you want to have, success with a super hot girl, like don't act like all the rest of the guys.
How should guys build confidence? Because it's all well and good saying that you should be the prize and you should make her chase. But what if you've got low self-esteem?
Yeah. That's going to be a problem that a lot of guys are going to have to deal with. Right. So by not making the conversation binary, right, by not hitting on the girl, you're actually going to lower the pressure. Because if you just, let's just say you just ask for directions. Not that that's like, the correct way, but I'm just saying as an example, you're not going to get nervous to ask a girl for directions, right? But you're going to get nervous if you feel like you're going to get rejected, right? And you get rejected when you communicate interest, or you put her in a position like, you give her compliments, or you kind of like state your intentions. You tell her, that, you think she's beautiful and you want to buy her a drink or whatever the fuck it is, so I would say go into the interaction from a standpoint of like, I just want to get to know this person. I want to find out more. I want to dig deeper, like act like you're on the Bachelor and you've got 20 other options. You're not just going to pick the first option. Like you're going to want to know more about this girl. And if you go into the interaction with that, you're going to subcommunicate a lot more value, because that's how, a guy that has options is going to act. So you can kind of act as if, and you can cheat the system a little bit, and you can like do some hacks in your mind to like put you in a better headspace, which is going to then subcommunicate confidence. And when you do that, then you're going to have better results. When you have better results, you're actually going to naturally have more confidence. You're going to have less anxiety because you're not putting yourself in a position to get rejected, right? And so there's a lot of things that you can do. And so my game has always been about like doing less to get a better result. And I think a mistake that a lot of guys make is they put in a lot of perceived effort. And this is before sex. So before sex, the amount of effort that you put in is going to cut negatively against you. And this is very like counterintuitive for a lot of guys, because in life, in your job, in business, the more effort, the more you're going to get a raise, or the more likely to get a promotion. You show up at your, buddy's house at 2 a.m. to bail them out or whatever, you bail them out of jail, like the things that you do for your friends, like, then they'll have your back, right? So like, all this effort is rewarded everywhere in life except for dating. So the more effort that you put in before you have sex with a girl, the harder it's going to be actually to have sex with that girl. And I think a lot of guys don't understand that concept.
What would you say to the women on the internet that go, but guys don't make enough effort with me? I want them to make effort. I want them to show me that they're interested. There's enough Lothario Playboy guys out there. It's actually really attractive when a guy shows me that he's interested and displays effort.
She's lying. Like, I mean, I think it's good to give effort after it's justified or deserved, but like I just ignore almost everything that women say because it's almost all bullshit. Because you ask women like, what do you want in a guy? And then you look at the last 20 guys they fucked and they have like almost none of those things on the list. So like asking, which is why like women dating coaches are just like such a waste of time, because there's what women say they want and then there's what they respond to, and what they respond to is what's important, right? So, and I don't think a lot of them understand like the subconscious response mechanisms too. Like one big one is pre-selection and jealousy. Like those are
talk to me
powerful.
about that. So pre-selection, you arriving or you being around other attractive girls. Not everybody has access to 100 chick harem in a desert island. What can guys do to get that pre-selection going?
I'm actually not like teaching do what I did, because that's, not really the direction that I feel like most guys are probably going to want to go down. And I don't think it's really like an achievable thing. What I'm teaching is more like, and I say teaching, like I'm not trying to be like a dating coach. I just want to kind of like put the right information out there so these guys have a roadmap to get where the they want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the big thing is, if they just didn't do the things wrong, they would have a massive leg up. So we just like start with like, don't do the like common mistakes. And then also, when I say put in effort, I'm like, I think it should be reciprocated too. Like a buddy of mine, he would have girls pick up a gallon of milk, on the way to his house. And he didn't even drink milk, but the act of them like doing something for them made them more invested in the relationship, and so these guys, like the effort is not going to be correlated to your positive outcome. It's like if you showed up to your first date with chocolates and roses, like you're not going to be more likely to sleep with that girl. In fact, I would argue that you'd be much less likely to sleep with that girl. And so it's just, listen, once you're in a relationship, you can put in effort, but I think the effort needs to be reciprocated, because the problem is if you're the only one putting in effort, if you subscribe to this like happy wife, happy life bullshit, then what happens is that effort becomes expected and not appreciated. And that's when women cheat on guys. When the guy is like constantly, because those are all a form of chasing. When you're constantly like making concessions, let's say movies, for instance, like, a woman would be happier watching an action movie on the third movie, like let's say she wanted to watch a rom-com and you caved and you're like, okay, fine, I'll watch a rom-com. Second one, okay, we can watch that. And the third one, you're like, no, tonight we're watching an action movie. She's gonna be happier watching that shitty movie that she doesn't like because she's next to a man that she respects than watching some stupid rom-com with some guy that she feels like as a pushover.
Very
like,
pliable.
People want boundaries. Like you want that too. I want that. Like I like a submissive woman, but I still want her to have like some sense of self.
An absolute doormat.
Well, I want her to have some sense of self. Like I want to know who she is, like she needs to stand up for something once in a while.
So there's a sort of degree of untrustworthiness to someone that's, if I can't trust your no, how can I trust your yes? My favorite example of this is Alex Hormozy. So Layla, his wife, is big into fashion and she gets dressed up and she's, makeup and new hair and she's like a fashion-y sort of chick. Alex wears shorts, a wife beater and Crocs with long socks. And he said, it's a really interesting point, that Layla is more attracted to me wearing the things that I want to wear than wearing the things that she wants me to wear. She's way more attracted to the guy that does what he wants to do, even if it's not what she wants to do. Because
that's a real person.
Correct.
Like that's unique to him. That's what makes him him.
So this is an interesting point that I really want to try and dig into. We've got this, and I think a lot of people will feel this tension between sort of authenticity and presenting yourself in the most appropriate way without being so contrived and sort of deceitful and manipulative that the person that shows up on the date is actually a million miles away from who you really are. How do you think about that balance between authenticity and cultivating sort of the best version of you to put that foot forward? You know what I mean? This tension.
I do. I think it's a great question and a good point. There's different levels to this stuff and there's different, parts. So I think a common mistake that guys make is they're like, you know what, I'm just going to be honest with her and I'm just going to like tell her how I feel. And like, and so they go in there and they're like, you know what, like you're it's been 2 dates and like, I really fucking like you. And I want to, monogamously date. They just like overstep too early. And it's like, yeah, okay, that's honest, but are you really that honest? Like the next time you guys walk out on a date and you see a girl with big tits, are you going to tell her like, oh, damn, like that girl has really nice tits. I was thinking about fucking her. Like there's limits to like what you can overshare.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I think you should be honest, and that's like a cornerstone of my belief system. Like I am like unapologetically honest. So I am like, if a girl asks me a question, I am like ruthlessly honest. So that's something that I for sure believe in. And I don't believe in like kind of presenting, false narratives or like acting to, like somebody that you're not. But I do believe in like being the best version of yourself, and also, in playing poker, like they're playing poker, you can play poker. Like it's okay. Like it's a bit of a game until you have sex. Like, and then you have to decide if you want to date. So I think this idea like you owe them, the entire truth about every single thing that you're thinking all the time before you even get to know them is just kind of a nonsense.
So there's this sort of a little bit of a tension between truly being yourself, standing up for the things that you want, maybe wearing the Crocs is a preference for you and might make her more attracted, even if it's not the thing that she would want, whilst also not being a completely sort of open vessel and totally transparent.
I see what you're saying. I think Alex gets away with that because he has value in so many other areas. Like if he wasn't rich, if he wasn't smart, if he wasn't successful, if he wasn't confident, if he wasn't all these other things, if he didn't have pre-selection, like obviously other women probably want him. Like there's a whole thing, right? Social status, he's got a lot of attraction triggers.
So he can get away with that.
I mean, look at me. I look like shit. I have a terrible haircut. I'm wearing a cheap watch. Like I don't give a like I wear booty hugger shorts, like, and I still get a ton of pussy. Like,
I think, well, I mean, you know what a counter signal is, right, from psychology. So there's something called the red sneaker effect, which is as CEOs or as people within companies get higher up in terms of their job title, and also as they become richer at the head, founder, CEO level, they dress increasingly more casually. So it's like the dude that's just graduated law school, making sure that you call him by his preferred title, the dude with 20 letters after his name that's a leading neurosurgeon and has been for 50 years, saying, just call me John.
Yeah.
So counter signaling is kind of that. I had this theory, which I think is true, that mustaches are counter signals for guys, that it's basically them saying, I've got so much surplus mate value that I can like retard myself with this thing on my upper lip and still pull. And it's kind of the same with the Crocs. It's kind of the same with...
Yeah, that's like high level game. That's like, okay, I'm like, it's kind of like this guy. I saw some YouTube videos of him and he will go up to girls and just say retarded shit to open and have success, and it's kind of like he's signaling that like what you're saying is not that important, but like he's doing it with such a degree of confidence. And then he also follows up the conversation with like being a semi-normal human being, and he's also good looking and all this stuff. But like, I guess the point is that sometimes if you are confident and you've got this stuff down to a science, I mean, like me and my friends, we would just basically give each other the line that we would have to go up to a girl with, and it was just atrocious, like really, really stupid, offensive, dumb shit, and we just have to deliver that, and we'd have to deliver it deadpan. We couldn't say, oh, my friend bet me to say this, and we would have crazy success with that. We would actually have better success with that than we would if we went up
with your own line
with what the world thinks is correct to say, and so so I think you have a point, but I think that you have to get to a certain level to do that.
Round out the pre-selection thing for me. I don't think we've closed that loop.
Okay, so pre-selection is basically like women believing that other hot women want to sleep with you. So, jealousy would be them being jealous of other women and seeing it. Pre-selection is kind of like, I don't know, if a girl sees that you have 4 million Instagram followers, she's just going to assume that girls want to fuck you, right? Because you have a level of fame, whatever. Like, and so I think pre-selection, and then there's like, visual forms of it. Like I would show up at the club with 2 or 3 girls that were like sitting on my lap that like, I had hooked up with, that were like trying to kiss me, all this stuff. And then like women would just come up. I could literally just like do like a come here and go fuck a girl in the bathroom without even talking to her sometimes, because the pre-selection was so strong. So it's not something that I would like say every guy's got. I'm just saying you should understand all the different attraction triggers. And there's ways to like trigger stuff too. Like let's say on an Instagram story, you just took a picture of your beer glass and a martini glass next to it. And that was it. And that was your story. Now girls will be like, who's he with? who's that girl? Or maybe there was just like you saw a nail, like, or a ring or something, in the photo. It's like you could trigger jealousy and you could trigger pre-selection without like being in your face of it.
So
Like I said, I'm not like telling people to do the shit that I did. You don't have to be there with 30 girls and all this stuff. Like I obviously like went to a circus level extreme, but mine was more like solving for fame, and it was like abundance, and it was like a lifestyle, and then it was a brand, and it was a whole thing. So like what I did had a reason behind it. And also that was part of my life. I just wanted to live this crazy life, and I was documenting it, and it was like a bucket list thing. But like, I don't think I optimized for getting laid. Like I had tons of girls, but I would not say my Instagram optimized for getting laid. And it's certainly not for like the highest quality of girls either. Like super hot, yes, but like not the best like quality. Like I almost like filtered that out almost. And so I wouldn't recommend that.
What was some of the more surprising realizations or reflections or attraction trigger insights that you had when going through this? What were the things that you go, oh, actually, I didn't realize that, and I didn't realize that, and I didn't realize that?
The biggest one was just how powerful the difference was between, pursuing and being pursued. That was probably the most like, when I really broke it down, because I realized like on the one side, it's like, when you're chasing, your flaws are magnified, but I didn't realize like that also the opposite effect was true. When a girl's chasing you, her flaws are magnified and your flaws disappear. And like the exponential effect of switching that.
Does that mean that guys, if they do become a little bit more successful, they make themselves the pursued as opposed to the pursuer, that they kind of need to reframe a little, well, I'm fixating on weird, like she's got a wrinkly elbow, like shut the fuck up. Like why? That doesn't need to be that.
No, it's more just the sense of being more discerning, like being like, picky with who you want to be with, not just
revolutionary,
not just accepting a girl's looks. Like that's a big thing. There's a big mistake that guys make. I see so many guys that are just with a girl because she's hot. And it's like, dude, you're worth $100 million. You're a smart guy. You're successful. And you're dating a little hooker because she's pretty. And I think guys need to get out of that mindset and start digging deeper and start like making girls prove themselves, making the girls compete, like, I mean, being the wife or a girlfriend of a guy that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars and that's smart and successful. Like that's a prize. Like
that's great for the people that are $100 million.
Yeah. That's just, the dude that's an extreme example.
Yeah. Earns normal money.
Yeah. So for the normal guys, I mean, it's the same concepts, right? Like, and honestly, like most of the girls that are dating those guys are cheating on those guys with the normal guys. They're the pool guy. They're the poor guy. Like a lot of times they're cheating with those other guys. And so you don't have to have the money, the status. I'm just saying that's one where there's like a big disparity and they're not taking advantage of the fact that like they could have a better relationship with the girl if they just framed it differently and treated the girl a little bit differently and didn't like over chase. Because when you're chasing something, it can't chase you back. That's another like key point too, is like the moment you start pursuing, they can't pursue you. So I've had women that were like literally like chasing after me. And the moment I like showed them too much interest, it like, oh shit, like
killed the attraction.
Well, I can have them now, it's real. Like shit, now I have to just sit like question, do I want to fuck Dan Bilzerian? Like, he wants to fuck me. Maybe that's enough. And I think with a lot of girls that just alone can be enough.
The validation. I wonder as well how many girls you're kind of selecting for that are psychologically unhealthy, for whom that is such an immediate turnoff.
Well, like psychology transcends all of this stuff. It's true whether you're damaged, whether you're 100% put together, like humans just respond. Like, like every human responds to an auction, like when you're buying something, you want to like, every house that you buy, you want to have an inspection. Like we're just wired the same way. Like as much as we want to think that we're like very different, like humans are herd animals. I mean, you saw that during COVID. You've seen that, numerous times with how much the media can sway. So like we are herd animals and people react, psychology is psychology. So, like a super smart girl is still not immune to intermittent positive reinforcement. Like there are certain principles that are going to apply regardless.
I wonder how many girls that are listening are thinking, yeah, there's been guys that were perfect for me, everything was right, and he just got too keen and there's some switch that kind of gets turned off. And I wish that wasn't the case. I wish that it wasn't the case that when a guy shows too much interest in me, that there's something kind of odd going on. So very much that push and pull, that sort of balance between the two, 60-40, 70-30 as opposed to 100-0.
And that's the problem, is like, it's okay to show interest and you should show interest and there should be some push pull. That's the problem, is there's not usually push pull. It's usually one person is chasing and it's usually the guy. And then the girl's like, okay, well, fucking 29, I kind of want to have kids. Like, maybe it's time to stop fucking athletes. Like, this guy's really nice, and then she goes into the relationship with the wrong frame. Like, she could end up with the same guy and be happy if he just behaved slightly differently. And I'm not saying like he should be manipulative or gamey or whatever, but it's just like, don't do certain things. You know what I mean? Like, wait a little bit for this, like, don't jump the gun. Like, just have some patience.
Talk to me about the admin. Is there any way to make the admin easier?
What do you mean, the admin?
Well, there's, you're dating, you're speaking to girls, there's the back and forth. It's like another inbox to manage with a couple of chicks that you're speaking to. Maybe you go for a date with this one, so on and so forth. For a lot of guys, I think that can get kind of like tiresome and exhausting. I'd certainly know a good few of my friends who, when they have gotten into relationships, they're happy that they found someone that cares for them, and they're happy that they're with somebody that they can spend evenings with and go on holiday with. And they're very, very happy that they no longer have to do the additional mailbox admin of Raya or Tinder or Bumble or Hinge or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be work to find the right partner. But if you want to find somebody that's going to bear your children, I'd say it's a pretty important decision. Mm-hmm. If you want to find somebody to stick your dick in that's just hot, then, maybe less important. So, it's just kind of like, to me, like, who you choose to spend the rest of your life with is the most important decision you'll ever make in your life. Who you choose to date is probably the second most important decision, right? So, I mean, yeah, it can be time consuming for sure. And that sucks. That is a shitty part of it. And there's ways to lower that time. And that's one of the things that I want to do too, is like, just give people better results with less effort. And in lowering the effort, they're saving more of their time. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a shortcut to just immediately finding the right one. I don't think I have that cheat code, but.
Do you have an idea about how much time and attention should be spent by keeping things ticking over digitally versus trying to get dates to happen? Did you get into cadence of seeing each other, all of that kind of stuff?
No, not like into the real like nuanced stuff like that. I didn't do a ton of online dating. So that wasn't really my thing. I mean, I teach guys like kind of the social media optimization and like how to use your socials, not posting 20 stories, and like, if you're going to post, like, have some time between posts, your engagement is better. And like, don't do needy posts. And if you're going to, if you really want to post and like brag about your car, like make the post not just about your car. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's ways to communicate the things that you want to communicate attraction triggers without being like really braggy or on the nose about it. And I think captions help. There's like, I mean, social media is like a whole separate thing that I kind of like cover, but I think if I were to like summarize the social media, it would be like more like, communicating the things that you want to communicate without overtly bragging, which is kind of funny coming from me, but
yeah, very rich.
Yeah.
What are the big pitfalls that guys do when it comes to their online social media?
I mean, look, who do you brag to? You brag to people that you're trying to impress. And so if you're trying to impress people, then they kind of like have to be above you, right? So if your social media is like really braggy, then you're going to kind of come off as insecure. So you can communicate value. You can show that, you live in a nice house. You can show that you have a fun life. You can show cool stuff. But the way to do it isn't necessarily like be standing in front of your Corvette with 4 stacks of cash. Like, there's just ways to show things without.
Tell that to rappers. All of the rappers.
Yeah, well, their whole net worth because they're wearing it at all points in time. So it's almost like a indicator, like IRS. This guy's got 400,000. But yeah, they're an extreme example. But I still see a lot of guys like make a lot of mistakes on social media. And I think social media is, it's a powerful dating app. It's, the thing about social media is,
we're talking primarily Instagram here, I'm going to guess.
Yeah. I mean, TikTok doesn't even allow you to message somebody that's not following you, which is kind of crazy. They don't even like tap into the dating element of it, but whatever. And yeah, my experience has been mostly with Instagram. So, yeah, with IG, it's kind of like when you do a story, you're indirectly almost texting every single girl on your phone without communicating any interest, right? And then if they respond to your story because you post something cool or something, that causes FOMO or they wish they were there or whatever, now they're, maybe they heart the story and now they have started the interaction. So now they're chasing, right? So like there's an example of like how you can do something very subtly. Like obviously like posting one story would be a lot easier than texting every girl on your phone. So there's ways to like save time with this, and still like, get in their mind, have them thinking about you, communicate value, build attraction. And, so yeah, social media is a tool. I don't choose to use it, but that doesn't mean it's not valuable.
How can guys set expectations more effectively? You've mentioned about being honest and truthful, but a lot of the time there's kind of a big discomfort. There's bravery and courage that's needed from guys to be able to do that. How can they set expectations, and how can they sort of learn to be more open and honest and truthful?
I think you're saying set expectations, kind of like set boundaries.
No, this is what I want. This is the sort of thing that this is going to be serious. This is not going to be serious. I'm looking for the mother of my kids. I'm just looking for something that is casual. Someone asks you, are you seeing other people, et cetera, et cetera? Like, how do you set those expectations well?
For me, I'm brutally honest. Like, I'm just brutally honest about it. Like, if I'm seeing other people, and she asks, then I tell her. So that's my approach. And I think when you do that, you also subcommunicate confidence, because you're telling them that the truth is more important than, whether or not they walk. And that's, to me, is like, that's not why I do it. I just do it because that's my moral code and that's just how I operate. And honesty is like super, super important to me. Like in a partner, it's actually like, really, really high on the list. So, and in order to ask for that, I have to offer it myself. That being said, it doesn't mean I'm telling these guys to like just blurt out every thought that comes into their mind. But, if a girl asks a hard question, be honest, and if they walk, then they walk. And I think being willing to let them walk, I think the common mistake that guys make, and I think this is one of the reasons why, like, almost every girl that I've ever dated doesn't have anything bad to say about me, is because I never bullshitted them. And I think a lot of guys in LA sell the dream. They tell girls that like, oh, you could be the one, or I'm going to take you to meet my, they just say all this bullshit. They say whatever they think the girl wants to hear so they can fuck them, or so they can string them along and date the 3 or 4 girls. And I was just, that wasn't my school of thought. I was always just like brutally honest. And because I was honest, it made the girls like, oh shit. And I also set a standard of what was acceptable too. And I set a crazy standard, because I one time had a girl ask me like, how many girls have you slept with this week, or how many girls have you have you slept with any other girls? And I was like, in what time frame? Sorry, I jumped the gun a little bit. She's like, have you been sleeping with any other girls? And I was like, in what time frame are we talking about? And she goes, I don't know, in last week. And I was like, yes. And she's like, how many? And I was like, 4. She goes, you slept with 4 girls in the last week? It's like, yeah, but I used condoms, And then she was just like, that was it for her. That was like her red line, and she was out. But 2 days later, she came back. And you know what? After she came back, she thought about it. She had processed it. And she was like, you know what? Like, I just really respect the fact that you just are going to shoot me straight. And I know that whatever you tell me after this point is going to be true, because like nobody would tell the truth about that and then lie about anything else. Right. And because of that, I was able to, have a relationship where I dated her and was able to sleep with whoever I wanted. And she never gave me shit about it. And she, respected the honesty. And that was like an unusual thing. But, it was because of, the raw honesty up front.
I wonder how many girls would find it sort of refreshing, even if it's something that they maybe don't want to hear, for the truth to be sort of so plain.
I mean, I would. I mean, I always ask, and this is like, people think this is crazy, but I ask girls, usually within the first 5 minutes of talking to them, how many guys they've slept with. I ask them like what the sluttiest thing they've done, what the most fucked up thing. Like, I just get right to the heart of it, and I just, because that's interesting to me. Like, most of what I, talk to models about is not that interesting, but like what her body count is, or what she says her body count is interesting, because it tells me like what kind of lie she's going to tell, and it's like, but if she says like a number like, 73, then it's like, okay, shit, like this girl's honest. Right. But any like low number, I just assume that she's lying. And then, and then I'll process it, and then like later on, it's like, maybe I can catch her. And if I catch a girl in one lie, then I kind of like don't trust them from that point on. But like I said, I like to ask questions like that get to the heart of, kind of like, what their value system is, like, how honest they are, like how crazy they are, how fun they are, how sexually liberated they are, like whatever it is. And like, it won't always blow them out. Like, I'm not a guy that says that girls only, can sleep with 3 guys, or I'm not going to take them seriously or whatever. Like, for me, like I said, honesty is like up here. Their body count is like more down here.
Are there any other big attraction triggers that we haven't covered?
Well, I mean, there's a decent amount of attraction triggers. I mean, some of them are, are going to be ones that you would know, like, looks or money or, whatever. But, then there's status, there's pre-selection, there's other ones that are somewhat counterintuitive. There's status, there's, leader of men. There's a bunch of different ones that will, trigger attraction on different scales. But sometimes just one attraction trigger is enough. Like pre-selection alone could just be enough. Humor sometimes could just be enough. Like it just depends on how strong it is. But that's one of the things is like identify what attraction triggers you have and then kind of like lean on those or favor interactions that would favor those attraction triggers.
So if you're a particularly funny guy, don't go to nightclubs where no one can hear you speak.
Exactly. Like play to your strong suits, like if you're a really unattractive guy, then, maybe like dating apps are probably not going to be the best thing for you, or like, or nightclubs also, because nightclubs, I think a lot of times, your initial, reception is going to be partially based on looks. So
what would your advice be to unattractive guys?
I mean, it depends on what their attributes are, because I've seen a lot of unattractive guys with really hot girls. And so, I mean, if they're rich, then they can use their money in many different ways to create, pipelines of girls coming in. So then you can have jealousy, you can have pre-selection, you can have competition, all these things. And, you can create scarcity. I mean, money's a powerful tool. Just most guys use it in the wrong way. They'll buy a girl a purse or they'll, just stupid shit that actually hurts them.
We spoke about this a year ago. And it seemed to me that when you were thinking this through, the hypothesis, that there's kind of two buckets. There's kind of the every guy, normal guy stuff. And then there's this other kind of elite level lifestyle design type guy. What's interesting or unique, or what's the setup for that guy that's maybe got fewer limitations?
Yeah, I mean, that would be, for me, the more fun to do more, one-on-one stuff with, because I can make a significant impact in his life. And most rich guys are used to using their money to get what they want. But in dating, a lot of times rich guys use their money and it cuts against them.
How so?
Well,
what do they get right and wrong?
They'll give a girl an allowance straight off the bat, which is good for control, but it's not good for respect. And I think, or they'll buy them purses before they've slept with them. And then the girl look, there's three buckets. There's guys that girls want to fuck. There's guys that girls want to date. And then there's both, right? What you don't want to be in is the bucket of I want to date him, but I don't really want to fuck him. That's the bucket that you fall into when you buy her a purse before you have sex with her, And so then she looks at you like, how much can I get from this guy? She looks at you like more like a meal ticket or a sucker. And the moment she does that, then all of a sudden you have to be below her because she's taking advantage of you, And so I see more guys use their money incorrectly to hurt them than I see them use it to help them. And if you use your money to help you, I mean, sky's the limit. I mean, I'm a good example of like what's possible if you deploy capital correctly. I mean, obviously that wasn't the only attraction trigger that I had, and I really dedicated a lot of my life to my sex addiction. But like, if you create a good environment, I mean, it's going to just make this massively accelerate. It's going to make it a lot easier. And then also you're going to have the pre-selection to work with. That's going to trigger the better women to chase you. And you're going to have a better relationship if the girl chases you. The more you can get a girl to chase you before, you guys are in a serious relationship. And even in the relationship, the more she's going to respect you, the more she's going to value you. Like, there's relationships where this guy, is massively higher value than the girl. But because he behaves a certain way, the girl not only doesn't respect him, but she's more likely to cheat on him versus that same guy and that same girl. If he acted correctly, that girl would be doing everything that she could to keep that guy happy. She'd be waking him up with blowjobs. She'd be doing all this stuff. She would look at him as much more of a prize. It's the same guy, but if he just acted correctly and didn't, do these common mistakes that these rich guys do.
Have you tried to use theory of mind to put yourself into the position of a guy that's a little bit more anxiously attached than you? Someone for whom, when their partner maybe doesn't message back for a little while, or the girl that they're speaking to or whatever, that they kind of get activated and they sort of want to push in a lot more. It's all well and good for you, sort of semi-sociopath dating man, to, like sort of cut through, it doesn't matter, like working in this rational, robotic kind of way. But emotions happen for some guys, and that's going to arise, and it creates a compulsion. It motivates them to behave in ways or deal with uncertainty.
100%. And look, I can lead a horse to water. I can't make him drink. I could tell him, what's correct. If he doesn't choose to do it because he can't control his impulses and his emotions and he has a bad result, that's on him. Right. So like, I mean, yeah. And that's the problem is that, when a guy feels a girl's pulling away, he's much more likely to massively engage and chase. And that's actually what is going to send her right off the planet. Right. That is going to send her out of the orbit of a girl that he's ever going to get back with. And so, yeah, you're right. That is his instinct. And that's one of the things that he needs to not do is when the girl is pulling away, he needs to not over chase, right? He needs to just like chill the out, take his Xanax, play it cool, and like not text her 50 times that night. Like, you ever seen Swingers?
No.
You never seen that movie? You got to watch it. Anyway, so this fucking guy, like, you got to watch the movie. He like calls his ex and he's just like constantly like leaving messages on the recording. And anyways, when he stops caring, then she wants him back. But it's a classic movie. You got to watch Swingers. Vince Vaughn. Anyways, point is that, yeah, I mean, that would be a classic example of a bad behavior pattern that is going to lead him to a bad result.
I asked Jocko how to get over a breakup. And
what do you say? Work out at 3 a.m.
Well, I mean, there was like do jujitsu, go for runs, lift weights, like blah, blah, like classic, get up at 4:30 in the morning. But also he said, walk away and don't look back. And this clip went like super duper viral. And it's him saying, walk away and don't look back. If she's the right one, walk away and don't look back. If she's not the right one, walk away and don't look back. Because if she's the right one, she'll come back around. Like, who knew that Jocko Willink and Dan Bilzerian were going to arrive at the same piece of dating advice? That wasn't on my 2024 bingo card.
Yeah. I mean, it is true though. I mean, and you've probably seen this, right? When you broke up with a girl and she's just like, okay, and walked, and you're kind of like, shit, but if she's like, come on, baby, like, let me make this work, it just pushes you away further.
That's a good point, actually. We've spoken an awful lot about starting things, but how can guys be good enders? Like, do you have any scripts or formats to follow when it's time to bring something to a close? That's not usually a problem most of these guys are going to have, but yeah. But if you get good at the inflow, you're going to have to get good at the outflow. I agree. Unless you're going to begin spinning a ton of plates. I agree. And so for that, I mean, once again, it goes back to honesty, it's just, but try and let them down easily. Tell them about the things that they can change, but there's no, like, if the reason that and I'm not saying this is right, but the reason that you broke up with this chick is she just really wasn't hot enough and you want to fuck other girls, you probably shouldn't tell her, baby, you're just not hot enough, I want to fuck other girls, right? So there's like limitations. You don't want to like ruin her self-esteem. But if she has been too clingy and she's been very annoying, then you can be honest about her and you can tell her, look, like, you're just driving me nuts. You're checking my phone all the time. You're doing this, you're doing that. And I just, it's not making me happy. And I want to break up. Like, you can tell her things that she can change. But what I wouldn't recommend is telling her things that she has no control over. That's just going to ruin her self-esteem, because that doesn't do you any good and doesn't do her any good. So, yeah. And don't do it over text, be a man, like, have the conversation. But if you've made up your mind, then I would say make up your mind. And if for some reason in this breakup, she's convinced you that you should take her back, I would say at a minimum, say, I want 1 week break. No talking, no communicating, no social media shit, just 1 week, no contact. And at the end of that week, you're going to have a pretty good idea of how much you miss her, how much, you valued her interactions, like how much that stuff really bothered you. You just, sometimes time is the best thing. And by doing that, you also have a week where it's like, it's not so final on your end either. Like, you could get her back if you want to, which makes it actually easier for you to end the thing. Right. And for her, it's like a little bit less of a, like immediate severing. So she's going to go less crazy in that week. So, I think that's a good strategy sometimes. But if it's just like inconsolable and she's just terrible, or you just want to break up with her, then I just, just don't string her along, just tell her the truth and, I'm going to move on, and there's just no getting back together. Getting back to your current sort of lifestyle situation, is kids on the horizon? Do you want to have kids? It's not something I really think about. A lot of people ask me that. My brother's got 3 kids. Maybe I'll get there. Right now, I am deriving happiness from helping other people out. And so I'm focusing on that. And I know that kids is kind of like a part of that, but that's the ultimate helping other people out, right? It's your own genetic lineage. A little bit, but I think you have to have the right girl. And,
that's the first step. A lot of people decide they want to have kids, and it's like, okay, well, you got to find it. Yeah, exactly. It's like, and that's a very important piece. Sometimes finding the right girl will make you want to have kids. Sometimes finding the wrong girl will make you not want to have kids. It's like, I don't want to have more of these people on the planet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting how many boss bitch CEOs then find a guy that they didn't think existed and, turn into a very happy mum, or how many dudes that were maniac business people in their 20s and their 30s find a woman that's the love of their life and go, my priorities have changed. I realized that so many of my businesses were surrogate children.
I think there's a lot more of the latter than the former. And I think the problem that a lot of these like boss bitch CEO girls are going to find is that by the time they want to have kids, it's like much higher chance of autism, all these other things. And they've also kind of like, not cultivated a lot of things that would probably help them be a good mother. So I think this like detachment from traditional male-female roles is another one of the problems that we have too. And I think it's okay for a woman to work, and I think it's okay for a woman to be a mom, or both. But I think both is tough. And I don't think that you can ever be a good mom if you have a full-time job either. So I would, say if kids are a priority, then, maybe focus on, doing more like of those sort of things, like, being a housewife, cooking, doing those sort of things. If that's what you enjoy and you enjoy, taking care of kids, that's a valuable role. And a successful guy would probably much rather have a woman that would want to do that versus work part-time and then get a nanny and maybe feed the kids after work when she's tired. It's just like, I don't think that's healthy.
What advice would you give to women who want to attract a guy that's worthy and that is going to treat them well? And how can they also be more attracting to guys?
The first thing is, I would say, be more honest with yourself of what you actually want. I think a lot of women say that they want all these things, and then there's a lot of guys that fit that criteria that are just invisible to them. And so, like the nice guy, I want a guy that's honest. You can go to Walmart and there's probably a lot of those guys, and these women won't even see them. Not to say that you should go like marry some guy from Walmart, but I'm just saying there's a lot of like nice, trustworthy guys that maybe aren't quite as attractive, that these women won't give the time of day, or maybe they're less successful or whatever, but that guy would die for you. You know what I mean? So like, if that's on your big priority list and like loyalty and honesty and all these things, then it's like, okay, maybe focus more on that. But I think what they tend to focus more on is status and, looks and, kind of like what's hot in the market, whatever, or what their friends would think would be good, or what, it's just, and so be true to yourself. Like, if that's really what you want, then look for that, give one of these guys a chance. God knows if he's like, one of these like guys that don't have a lot of options, he's probably like never going to cheat on you and treat you like gold and cut off his arm for you, and it's like, if you're a woman that values loyalty, then, maybe go looking for loyalty. Don't go looking for, the basketball player,
I've been thinking about cultivating receptiveness for women. Like, that's one, I think, pretty uncontroversial piece of advice. So in a post-Me Too world where any normal, sane, sort of respectful guy treats a no as a fuck no, or anything that is shy of kind of a yes as this could be a bad situation waiting to happen in a headline. Yeah. I think that women are still, they've got some conceptual inertia from the why men love bitches, treat him like you don't like him, sort of 90s into noughties dating advice that was very widely distributed to women. And they need to realize that the environment that they find themselves in is guys that a lot of the time are kind of scared of making a woman uncomfortable. First off, because if you're not a piece of shit who wants to make a woman feel uncomfortable. Secondly, because you're terrified of being a Me Too thing. Thirdly, because you've been massively under-socialized because you spend all of your time on social media. You've got this huge, big stack all on top. And I think treating men as a woman, like me fucking mansplaining, treating men as kind of like particularly slow golden retrievers that need bigger signals than you might think. So in the sort of aristocratic era of Great Britain, ladies would drop a handkerchief in front of sort of the gentleman that they wanted. And it's an easy opportunity for the guy to, oh, miss, mom, and hand that back over. Yeah. And I think sort of what's the 2024 equivalent of that, a lingering gaze that lasts a bit longer than you think, so that you go, I mean, she's either got something in her eye or she wants me to go over. Yeah. You know what I mean? So cultivating receptiveness, I think, is a cool idea.
That would be one. I also think that, like, just kind of being more proactive as a woman because of the current dating, like you said, guys are scared, like they get a lot of negative reception. A lot of guys don't know what to do, so they have bad results. And so maybe as a woman, just, don't go hitting on guys, but just go have a conversation with them. You'd be surprised at how much more receptive men are to, a reasonably attractive woman coming up and trying to have a conversation with them, and it's like,
yeah, maybe they wouldn't be that surprised at how receptive men would be to a reasonably attractive woman going up.
Yeah, but then why not do it? Because they don't really, because what's the downside, right? Like for a guy, there's a lot of downside. You get rejected, you get embarrassed. It's like this, it's that. But like for a woman, why not? Just go have a conversation.
Well, the hit rate's definitely going to be higher. Did you see yesterday that French athlete Elise Finot, who proposed to her husband after winning a gold?
I did.
That caused a big sort of shitstorm on Twitter with women saying, I would never do this. Guys saying, you've basically just been cucked in front of the entire world. Other people saying, well, this is super romantic. She's just achieved her dream in terms of career. Now she's going to achieve her dream in terms of family. What did you make of that and the subsequent response?
It's interesting. My first reaction was kind of like, what the fuck? But then, look, if she's more successful than him and she's the breadwinner, look, at the end of the day, I'm not a big proponent of marriage because I think it makes your relationship more transactional and more financially based. Because basically what you're doing, if you're a rich guy and you get married, you're putting a bounty on the relationship. It's like, okay, she wants to get a divorce. Like now she gets $100 million. You're putting a reward on that. And so for her, maybe if she's the breadwinner and maybe she has more money, then she's making more of a sacrifice by getting married and she's putting more of her finances on the line. Like maybe this guy's a backup dancer or something, or a mechanic at Automart, and she's making $200-300 grand a year. Then in that scenario, I actually think it's, it's okay. Right. And it's surprising come from me because I'm a very like traditional conservative guy, but I don't know. What if she was worth $100 million? Not that she was, but I'm just saying like in a relationship, like if a woman was worth $100 million, then maybe she should propose because she's the one giving up, the most. I don't think
he could take her surname.
Well, I don't know about that, but like, I think who has the most money definitely makes a big difference. Because that's really at the end of the day, you're getting the government involved in your relationship and you're bringing the finances into it, right? Like if you want to get a divorce, you're going to, and then it's messy. You're going to have lawyers, you're going to be in court and you're going to be fighting over money. That's how it ends.
There's certainly going to be more conversations around this. And I wonder how female and feminist culture is going to deal with marriages where women on average out-earn their male counterpart. Women between ages of 21 and 29 earn on average £1,111 more than men do. So, the gender pay gap is largely a motherhood tax. It's when women hit motherhood and then they have to take maternity leave, they take time away, they have different priorities, et cetera, et cetera. 2 women for every 1 man completing a 4-year US college degree by 2030. The gap that we had between men going to college and women going to college 50 years ago when Title IX was brought in to encourage women going to college has now been reversed and broken through in the other direction. So the gap is now bigger in favor of women going to university than it was for men when they implemented Title IX, which was this big world-changing idea so that we could get more women into college. And downstream from that, the people that go to college get paid more on average. I know that college isn't everything, blah, blah, blah. You can make as much money as a sparky or as a plumber or as an electric, whatever. But you're going to end up with way more women being the breadwinners in households. So I think it's going to be an interesting role reversal when you go, okay, what's happening with marriage now? Is it making an honest woman of someone when the woman out-earns the man? And how does sort of a lot of the modern talking points that women have been given, how does that play together? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a strange thing that I never thought that I would be discussing. To me, I think this is probably the reason why our birth rate is declining, Yeah, like I said, I'm more conservative. I think the men traditionally should be out, making the money and doing that. If you don't want to have kids, I guess both people can work. And
what a beautiful future that is for everybody, just feeding the capitalist machine.
I mean, that's kind of the thing, right? Is where does that end? So, I don't know. I thought it was okay, that the men went out and worked and the women, had kids and raised families. I mean, I thought that worked pretty good. It worked for thousands of years, but apparently that's, not what people want to do now. And so I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a big proponent of marriage just because I think it's unnecessarily puts strain on the relationship and puts pressure on the relationship and makes it more about money than it should be. But I guess to your point, if the woman is making more money, then maybe she's the one that should be proposing.
Wow. Who knew? Dan Bilzerian says women should propose more. Where should people go? You got all of this new stuff happening. What's launching? What's sort of coming up from you?
Protocol. I have a supplement line coming out that is no artificial ingredients. So like no artificial sweeteners, nothing. And that was one of the big issues that I had when I would take supplements before, is that they had so much artificial sweetener that it was just kind of like mess with my stomach. And so, came out with a full supplement line that has no artificial sweeteners and no bullshit in there. And that's, it should be done, I think, on the 20th. So probably around about the time this comes out, should be available, protocol.com. And then, Sigma Society is the guy thing to help them out, give them like the roadmap and help them with just the mistakes that they're making and the bad roadmap. I mean, like I said, I think they have a roadmap that has Canada in the south and they're, going south and they're trying to get to Canada and it's not going to happen. So I'm going to give them a correct map.
Hell yeah. I appreciate you, man. Thank you for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that episode, you will love my full-length conversation with Alex Hormozi, which is available right here. Go on.